So over to you, ma'am.
Yeah, thank you, Rupali. It's my pleasure to be there with you today, and I hope my screens are visible to you.
Yes, it is.
Okay, okay. So, my today's talk is about artificial intelligence of things, AIoT, as already mentioned in the brochure. So, I'll start it now. Rupali has already introduced me. I'm Sarika from NIT Kurukshetra. So, my talk today is about artificial intelligence of things. As you all know, we have fictitious fictional characters like Tom and Jerry. We have the combo of hamburgers and fries. These are some of the greatest and most powerful duos. Both may have a unique individuality, but when clubbed together, they make a booming impact. AIoT is also one such amalgamation that gives enterprises the best of IoT and AI thanks to the concept of convergence. 1 plus 1 becomes 11. So IoT plus AI becomes AIoT. The agenda of the session is the trajectory of technological progress, artificial intelligence of things, and where the data will be processed, either edge, fog, or cloud, challenges and opportunities to look into. And the major part will be the semantic technologies as the enabler for AIoT. Then, role of semantic intelligence in AIoT and certain key takeaways at the end of the session, then a selected bibliography. Let us start from the trajectory of technological progress. Have a look here. Starting from the pre 90th century BC, there was use of fire wheel language. 90th century BC till 1900, there were development of civilization, steam engine, electricity, and so on. In the same reign, there was industrial revolution, that is the first one, and steam power came into picture. During the same reign itself, in 1870, it was second industrial revolution, and electricity came into being. In 1969 to from 1900 to 2017, in fact, the planes there and the electricity was used worldwide: radio, television, computers, internet. 1969, third industrial revolution with IT coming into picture. Fourth, in 2020, and the three different types of artificial intelligence came into being to the knowledge of people: artificial narrow intelligence, artificial general intelligence, and artificial super intelligence. What we see today in today's world is in fact artificial narrow intelligence and not general intelligence. We still need to reach general intelligence. You might have watched the movies Terminator, Star Wars. All of them we call AGI, and we are not able to reach till there yet. AI, ML, DL, neural nets, what we perceive and work with today is artificial narrow intelligence. If it is Internet of Things, it came into being mainly with the public in 2016 with smart thermostats, smart everything going smart. That is Internet of Things. People might have already defined this term in this FDP. Let us have a look on a small history of IoT. Starting from 1830s, SCADA software was there, electric telegraphs, Wi-Fi. In 1982, it all started with a modified Koch machine at Carnegie Mellon University, which became the first connected smart appliance. Using the university's, in fact, the local Ethernet or the ARPANET, students could find out which drinks were stocked and whether they were cold or not. Then came RFID based solutions. Till 1999, people were working with it. And in 1999, the term IoT was coined by entrepreneur Kevin Ashton at MIT. It was 1999 when this term was coined. Then there was smart meters were there, communication technologies came into being, and smart devices start being prepared. The web enabled apps and services were there. Then came the reign of physical, cyber, social systems, linked data and semantics. As I just mentioned, the semantic technologies, the semantic intelligence came into being approx 2010 with the development of with the vision of semantic web by the Tim Berners-Lee. Then Internet of Things entered the mainstream consumer domain in 2016. It was the time when the consumers start utilizing the IoT applications, the cloud platforms, big IoT data analysis, IoT with actionable information, multimodal fusion. I said IoT with actionable information. This was possible with what I just said, the physical, cyber, social systems, link data, semantics, and all. Then only we could get the actionable information. I'll go deep into it. How, why do I call it actionable? So it is 2020. That is, today we are able to combine the ML algorithms and the semantics of World Wide Web, and we are able to get the actionable information. If I start with a very brief overview of what is IoT, have a look on these niche applications of IoT. Smart Tray of X, you might have heard of. It synchronizes with your smartphone to tell you how many eggs you have got at the home and when they are going bad. Connected pacifier is there, it connects to your smartphone again, then and tracks your baby's temperature. Smart watches are there, you can use for elderly people at home to understand that they are not getting any problem. Then pet feeder is there, smart toothbrush is there, and the moms are relieved of the duty whether your kid has brushed the teeth properly or not. Look at this Cisco from April 2011, a picture I have brought in front of you. You can see there are more connecting devices than people. Starting from, you can see in 2003, it was 6.3 billion world population, and the connected devices were 500 billion. This was the time from 2003 to 2010. The connected devices start becoming more than the people were there in the world. And till 2020, you can see the world population 7.6 billion, connected devices 50 billion. So 6.58 the connected devices were there per person. So it is really a boom. Lot many devices, lot many data is there, and in trillions, in quadrillions, we are getting data every day. IoT is a disruptive technology. Disruptive, I think you might be aware of the term. A disruptive technology is one that displaces an established technology and shakes up the industry a whole, or you can say a groundbreaking product that creates a completely new industry in its own. IoT is a disruptive technology when things such as wearable devices, refrigerators, digital assistants, sensors, and other equipment are connected to the internet. They can be recognized by other devices, and they can collect and process data. We say this is Internet of Things. Have a look on certain challenges and barriers, because during the inception stage, that is around 2011, several barriers had the potential to slow the development of IoT, but IoT has really survived. The first is the deployment of IP version 6, as the world ran out of IPv4 addresses in Feb 2010. The second may be the self-sustaining sensors, because you can never change the batteries of billions of devices around the world. It's not possible at all. So the sensors have to be self-sustaining, and of course the agreement on standards, because at that time IEEE was the only standardization that existed. Once these major barriers, the challenges are overcome, what next? What to do? Because they have already been overcome by the research community. Now the IoT should demonstrate a tangible value to the people's lives. This is what is artificial intelligence comes into picture. Sense, comprehend, learn, and act also. That is the actionable. The intelligence should not be the intelligence, it should be actionable intelligence. Sensing is done by IoT sensors, actuators, and devices. When you sense it, lot of data is being generated. You need to understand that data, you need to devise certain relationships between the data, you need to comprehend the data. Again, the machines need to learn. After comprehending the data, the machines have to learn, because whatever data has come into it, you need to classify the data, you need to understand the patterns, and the machine needs to learn as a human being learn, so that whenever new data comes, the machine need not to train every time. And after sense, comprehend, learn cycle is finished, then the machine is ready to act. The machine is ready to make predictions, make recommendations, and provide the actionable intelligence. Artificial intelligence is this intelligence what I talked about, exhibited by software or machines. Artificial intelligence is a branch of computer science that aims to create intelligent machines that mimic human behavior. An intelligent app, in fact, doesn't make the diagnosis, doesn't make the decisions. They just provide a decision support. It can only sort through massive data sets to look for patterns, potential diseases, and treatments. But the final decision is in the hand of human being always. I come this way to AIoT, artificial intelligence of things. As I said, the convergence of AI and IoT. AIoT is AI powered IoT solutions that is driving the business value. Embedding AI technology into IoT components, you can say it anyway. The already smart things of IoT. I said already smart. The IoT things are already smart. They become intelligent. AI can transform IoT data into valuable information for improved decision making, both on site and remotely. IoT is thus the digital nervous system, but AI provides the brain to it, and the amalgamation is making wonders. Have a look here. IoT is allowing the real time connectivity, signaling, and also the data exchange. Now the data has come to us to do analytics. AI will provide the necessary intelligence, problem solving, and the decision making. So with only IoT, we will not be able to work. We will not be able to provide the artificial general intelligence of Terminator and Star Wars. You will have a look here. Let us have a look here on certain applications, and let us see how AI comes into picture in these devices. Have a look. There is automated vacuum cleaner like that of iRobot Roomba. Another is smart thermostat solutions from the Nest Labs, self-driving vehicles such as that of Tesla Motors. I like to ask the audience, how is AI coming into picture in all these three devices? As I've explained what is AI, I like to interact with the participants if they are there. Otherwise, I can also have queries at the end of the session. So, are there certain participants? I do not have control of the chat window. Miss Rupali?
Yeah, yes, ma'am. Queries can be taken up at the last, or if anybody is having any doubt, they can put forward.
Yeah, queries will be taken at the last. If you have
Yeah.
any doubt, you can always unmute your mic and ask me. But right now, if some of the participant listening carefully, may I ask, where does AI come in any one of them? Okay, I'll start with the first one. Then please go ahead with the second and the third one. So in automated vacuum cleaner, I hope everybody knows the working of a vacuum cleaner. So where is AI? IoT cannot provide the intelligence. This is AI which will do it. So it will map and remember a home layout, adapt to different surfaces or new items which are coming in the room, clean a room with the most efficient movement pattern that it could do, and also dock itself to recharge its batteries. So this is how AI comes into picture in an automated vacuum cleaner. All these tasks are done by an artificial intelligence agent that is embedded into IoT. May I ask, in smart thermostat solutions, how does AI come into picture? Will any participant like to speak upon it? Okay, I'll go on with this also, and you can please think for the third one. And if you want me to hold on for few seconds to think over it, I can do that. Okay, smart thermostat solutions. Where does AI come into picture? The Nest device, what does it do? It learns the regular temperature preferences of its users and also adapt to the work schedule of its users. How? By turning down energy use. So this is what thermostat solution. In this thermostat, AI is working to learn the temperature preference of the user, and if the user is in the room, and what is the capacity of the room right now, it can do the task according to that. So in self-driving vehicles, where is AI? Tesla's CEO Elon Musk mentioned in his article in Fortune, the whole Tesla fleet operates as a network. When one car learns something, they all learn it. It is not like that you induce ML or DL in one vehicle and that only vehicle learns. No, the complete fleet operates as a network, and when one car is learning, the same training set the same training parameters are passed to all the cars and all the car learn it. Let us have a look on the potential of AIoT. Four bullets are there in front of you: collective intelligence, digital twins, simultaneous localization and mapping by drones, and autonomous robotics platform. So you can see the whatever we have seen just now, the examples we have seen is collective intelligence. Situation awareness is being provided. We have smart traffic solutions. Even in logistics, it is helping by, for example, the logistic service providers can gather the data on temperature, humidity, and they can maintain the right conditions of the cargo. Digital twins are, in fact, virtual simulations of the real world things. Engineers can analyze the performance of equipment in the real world while reducing the cost and ensuring the safety also. The drones can, regarding the simultaneous localization, because drones may go to certain areas which were not discovered before, like the mines. So the drones can interpret or localize unknown surroundings by mapping the environment. So it helps them in hazardous areas like mines. The autonomous robotic platforms is also similar. These robots map the environment, they detect the obstacles, other devices, and humans also. Moreover, they can even drive autonomously through large warehouses, picking the goods off the shelf and delivering them to the right place. And even they can reroute themselves when they encounter the obstacles. So, all this is the potential of AIoT and much more. Look in agriculture domain, uh, the in from the agriculture you can collect data on temperature, rainfall, humidity, wind speed, and soil content. Where is the intelligence? The automated farming techniques. So to take the informed decisions, what is the result? Improve quality, the quantity also of the produce, minimize the risk and waste, and reduce the effort required to manage the crops. If I say in production, in manufacturing, what is the potential of IoT? To detect the anomalies in the production process before even it starts to cost the manufacturer heavily. Even in the middle of production, you could detect the various anomalies so that it doesn't cost to the manufacturer at all. Let us try to retie the AI IoT note with the mention of what is termed as ambient intelligence. You can see in this picture, which I have brought from IEEE Intelligent Systems from Shapiro et al., AI started to be implemented on hardware. You can see here hardware in this picture started to be implemented on hardware, such as the Walters Robo Turtle and the Snark by Marvin Minsky. Neural networks were one of the technologies that were there at that time, and that was implemented on such systems. In the second phase, AI centered on computers with the Mycin expert system as a very good example of a good old fashioned AI, I will call it. The symbolic AI. The expert systems, if you remember, the AI textbook contain the production rules, the heuristics, the facts and rules, prologue language, Lisp. Mycin is one such example, and they have disappeared to some extent since the advent of machine learning in 1980. The third phase focused on networks. A landmark application here was American Express Authorizer's Assistant. During the 90s, I should say, the web boom produced several search engines and recommender systems using intelligent agents, and more recently, the semantic technologies like the ontologies and the knowledge graphs have been introduced, and they have given a quick start to better recommendation systems and search engines. Current trends point to incorporating intelligence into our environment even. AMI is the way to achieve this. So, if I define what is ambient intelligence, ambient intelligence from Wikipedia, I have brought this definition. Ambient intelligence allows devices to work in concert to support people in carrying out their everyday life activities, tasks, and rituals in an intuitive way, using information and intelligence, both the things. Using information and intelligence that is hidden in the network connecting these devices. Information in the connecting network means IoT. From IoT, network, the information is coming. Intelligence in the connecting network, meaning AI. So the note AIoT has come as a boon for the expansion of ambient intelligence. Initially, IoT was not conceived to provide either ambient intelligence or even the autonomous control. An autonomous control system performs control functions on the physical systems and also compensate the system failures without external intervention. This is the important keyword in the definition, that it is able to compensate itself the various system failures without even the external intervention. That is why we call it autonomous system. Example can be a smart thermostat that is learning to autonomously control the central heating systems based on users routine and their presence in the room. Ambient intelligence and autonomous control together have been taken over by the IoT devices, are providing both the things, ambient intelligence and autonomous control also in today's date, with the help of artificial intelligence. Let us see how. The IoT devices requires to sense the environment state, maybe sensing the home temperature for this thermostat example, and perform the actions. So we require the IoT device to do it. The ML algorithms may find it hard to train an IoT device to provide an autonomous and ambient environment to human beings. So the autonomous and ambient environment is difficult for ML algorithms. Otherwise they were doing great. The reinforcement learning approach can allow these IoT devices to learn through how the maximizing accumulated rewards that are there in the reinforcement learning approach, and these rewards they receive in long term. So through this, the reinforcement learning approach can help the IoT devices reach ambient intelligence and the autonomous control. So it is all about data. Everything is about data. IoT devices are generating lot of data. Even IDC predicts that more than 59 zettabytes of data will be created and consumed in the world this year. The global data sphere will grow from 59 zettabytes, as you can see in 2020. The global data sphere will grow from 59 zettabytes in 2020 to 175 zettabytes in 2025. From 59 in 2020 to 175 in 2025. IDC is a premier global provider of market intelligence and advisory services. It helps IT professionals make fact-based decisions on technology purchases. IDC also predicts that since the same data is being processed again and again, the same data as in this COVID-19 situation, the same data is being processed again and again, driving the unique data sphere down to 10% of the total data sphere. Today it is 1:9. The unique data by replicated data, it is 1:9, but by 2024 it is going to be 1:10. That is a 10% down of the total data sphere, and this is getting to be challenging. We have to look into it. You can see here in this chart, the chart for the real time data. The light blue color you can see is the percent of total global data sphere, and the dark blue is the real time data in the chart above. And in the chart below you can see the blue part, the dark blue part repeated again. You can see the IoT drives real time data. So IoT is in fact the major driver of data, and not only data, it is the major driver of the real time data. कुछ कहना है? बंद कर दो. Look here, this is also a very beautiful illustration provided. The Internet of Things has a potential economic impact of 2.72 to 6.2 trillion USD until 2025. This is the ideal time for AIoT. You can see here in the middle, we should now go for AIoT. embed artificial intelligence in IoT. AIoT can bring the increased intelligence to us. The global data is exploding. Yes. Again, an example you can see, we need to mind the gap. There is a gap between the potential and the delivered value. A recent study conducted by Forrester for Hewlett Packard Enterprise surveyed around 5,000 plus ML practitioners. It was found that only 14% of respondents had a defined, repeatable, and even the scalable process to operationalize the machine learning models that had delivered a range of demonstrable projects. Means having a potential is different, but delivering the value is again different. There is a gap between data that is available and the actionable insights we can derive from that data. There is a gap between quantity of available data and the amount of data that is usefully analyzed. Say the data is usefully analyzed now. Again, there is a gap between the data that has been analyzed and the amount of the data that is really put to operation. This is so surprising as it is already 7 years now from when we entered the age of analytics 3.0 in 2013. So it is really surprising. We need to mind the gap because the Hadoop solutions, Hadoop like solutions, we are able to put more data under management. The black curve you can see, we are able to put more data under management. But as all the stored data is not analyzed, this creates the so-called insight gap, the blue curve. This blue line shows the analyzed data, which we are able to analyze. Again, all this analyzed data cannot be put to operation. The execution gap comes in. That is the gap between an organization's ability to analyze and make sense. This is the operationalization problem, often abbreviated as O16N. So we need to work upon the operationalization problem because inside gap is there. Okay. Again, execution gap is there. So we need to operationalize the products we are creating. What is the solution? Here is a solution, the AMI pipeline to wisdom. You might have come across the DIKW pyramid as you can see on the left. Starting from data till wisdom, data is the raw data that is generated from the IoT devices. It is coming to you. It is coming to the centralized gateway on the LAN itself, wherever there is the hub. This data, when put to context, becomes information. With your experience or from the machine's experience, if the machine has already certain knowledge in back mind, for as humans have their knowledge in the back mind, they can attain wisdom using the information that is provided. So only data till information will not work. We need to reach the wisdom, but in today's date wisdom is only with the human beings. Look here on the right hand side. This is adapted from a talk by the George Wodnick, future Waytech Inclusive. He is there as a manager. So going from what happened to what will happen, going from data to wisdom. When you attain wisdom, you can say you are able to act, you are able to take an action on behalf of the humans. And who all executed, the actuators and the online services are the real things who will execute all this. So staying at data or at information will not solve the problem. You will be having the less understanding of relationships. If you want to do miracle, you have to reach till knowledge. So the knowledge keyword I want to introduce from this slide, that till information we cannot do anything. We have to reach till knowledge. If you want to get a better understanding and if you want to have the ability to act upon whatever data has been produced. So AIoT intelligence can be offered, the data processing, I should say, at 3 levels. On the IoT devices itself, directly at the sensors, or at the edge or the fog nodes, or at the cloud also. The decision depends upon the time sensitiveness. The cloud, big data processing and data warehousing. If we want big data processing, that is not possible on the small devices, we naturally need to move to the cloud. Then comes fog, then comes edge. Let me start from the edge. Edge is the exact device. If you are doing on the exact device, as you can see in this chart, in this small icon figure, you can see various IoT devices are connected to the central hub. If we are doing the processing on the devices itself as compared to the center hub, we say we are doing the real time, and the local data processing, we say that we are processing on the edge. But if you move the data to the central hub, that is the center of the LAN hardware, the gateway or the processor, we say that we are doing the processing on the fog. That is the network, fog is the network edge. But if this gateway is also not capable, or we can say that we want to join from very different data sets or very different networks also, because similar to this one LAN network, there can be many more, and you want to combine data, you want to connect data from all those, then definitely you will have to have a cloud for big data processing and data warehousing, as I just mentioned. Have a look here on this example. You have a cloud AI camera and an edge AI camera. There is a house you can see. On that house, a camera is mounted, and this is the example of the cloud AI camera. The data from this camera is sent out to the cloud server. At the cloud server, AI detects the intrudent, if there is any intrudent, and sends back the result. So there is, it is taking time. While in the edge AI camera, in the camera itself, that is in the device itself, that is at the edge, we are inducing AI, and now the AI can detect the presence of intruder at a much faster speed than it was with the cloud AI camera. Let us have a look on the various features and advantages of edge computing. Faster results, as I just mentioned, and with lesser bandwidth because of low latency. Latency is the time lag between the action taken and the result. So definitely, if the processing is being done at the device itself, it will have very low latency. For systems and devices that monitor, that diagnose and take action on individual pieces of equipment, like house automation system, like the remote controlled autonomous driving, it makes sense to perform analysis as close as the device. Sending the locally created and locally consumed data to the cloud causes costly network traffic, delays in decisions, and they can even drain off the battery of the power devices. The predictive analysis is a very positive thing with the edge devices, as the IoT devices are being used to report incidents like equipment failure. Performing the predictive analysis on these machines is possible by including AI into the process. This will allow to take proactive measures to optimize the time. The cost of computing and data transfer, as I have already mentioned, uh, is a is a positive. Even more security is provided, because in the cloud, security threats are omnipresent, and the sensitive information is accessible from all around the world. An AI powered solution on edge can even finally an AI powered solution can be used to identify malicious signatures at the edge of the system, as this example just said. If a cyber attack targets IoT devices, the edge AI system can quickly execute and safeguard the system. Have a look here for again certain examples that the processing to be done at the edge or at the cloud. If I say of self-driving car, a small device, similarly an autonomous driving robot, then everything is to be done at the edge. You cannot wait to for the data to go to cloud and the decision or the recommendation come back from the cloud, because till then the accident will have already occurred. So everything is to be done at the edge. The object detection to decide the path, taking turns, unexpected traffic changes, all is to be done at the edge. For the city traffic surveillance, yes, there are certain tasks which can go to the cloud. you are doing surveillance of the traffic, so it is not that much urgent. The time is you have some time to take decisions. There are certain tasks that you can do at the edge: the vehicle recognition and the traffic flow assessment. Do it at the edge, send the data of the vehicles to the cloud, then the cloud will provide certain recommendations to the edges regarding redirecting the traffic, altering the speed limits, and adjusting the traffic lights, and so on. So I hope these will provide sufficient examples to the newcomers that where the data processing should take place, either the edge or the fog or the cloud. I hope the difference is also pretty much clear. Have a look here, uh, an image brought from the Data Age 2025 survey. You can see the yellow, the blue, and the dark blue lines. The yellow lines are for, in fact, the edge. The blue lines, light blue lines, are in fact for the fog, and the dark blue lines are in fact for the cloud, as you can see. Actually, this magazine has spoken the edge as the endpoint, the fog as the edge, and the cloud as the core. So these are the different terminologies. But the focus, the point I wanted to emphasize here is that you can see the dark yellow and the dashed yellow line. This is for the endpoint, that is for the edge. The creating and storing of data is different. Means the dark is the create. The this much data is being created at the edge or the endpoint, while this much data is being stored. We do not store all the data at the endpoint. We need to store it somewhere, either in the gateway, that is the fog, or to the cloud. Similarly, for the light blue, you can see dark is above and the dashed is below. But for the dark blue, that is the cloud, you can see the dashed is above. Lesser data is created at the cloud, but more data is stored at the cloud. So this is the difference between the creation and storing of data at the edge, fog, or cloud. With this, I am done with the introduction and the motivation of AIoT. Let us have a look to certain features of AIoT to summarize, and the challenges and the further opportunities for AIoT, so that we are able to overcome these challenges. Here I have summarized certain features of AIoT as I was just speaking about it since last few minutes. There are billions of things. There is quintillion bytes of data per day. There are billions of devices all around the world. That is why the data volume, also the velocity, is a feature, and it is coming as a challenge to us because it is generated from millions of sensory devices and crowd sensing sources. The data is dynamic and unreliable because of the continuous streaming data, that is the real time data. The data is noisy and incomplete again because of the continuous streaming. And it is also time and location dependent. You never know when it will come immediately, and with what batches it will come. This is also very important, that is the data is multimodal. Audio, video, text, structured, unstructured, all types of data is coming. The data is distributed, it is coming from different variegated sources, it is heterogeneous, it is it is in different formats. Number one, it is coming from different types of devices from different manufacturers. Number two, so it is pretty heterogeneous. Trust, privacy, and security are always the major issues. The complexity and diversity of IoT data sets, I have already said. So this is a very, very big problem which we need to address. And I've listed them as challenges and opportunities. I've come up with four major challenges in front of you in this talk: scalability, interoperability, reusability, and the semantic gap. Scalability, of course, it is there because the devices are increasing day by day, the users are increasing day by day, and the volume and velocity is a challenge. So scalability is a problem, we need to deal with it. Researchers are working, yes, but still there is a scope. The manufacturers of IoT devices use diverse mechanism for communication, from APIs to socket communication to messaging protocols. So there have been efforts to deal with these issues. For example, annotation of IoT devices. So device interoperability and also the data interoperability both are a problem for the AIoT. Facilitating reusability of applications. Yes, because the next challenge is that the facilitating you need to facilitate reusability of applications across multiple contexts. For example, smart homes, offices, cities, and also regardless of the underlying device infrastructure, you need to provide reusability of application. It is not like that an application is devised for smart home and it cannot work in an office. The fourth major problem that I have brought in front of you is the semantic gap. The data captured by IoT devices is low level in nature. There is a semantic gap between the smart spaces and the higher level abstraction, the higher level concepts that users are in fact interested in. And this semantic gap, if filled using the latest technologies, the semantic technologies, then even the device and data interoperability problem, the reusability of applications, and the scalability problem, I think all four of them can be covered if you utilize the semantic technologies in performing AIoT. Let us look in the rest of the time. I think it is half of the time I have gone. So, rest half of the time I will like to devote upon how semantic technologies can help cover up all these four challenges in the major run. And this will also provide a platform for the new researchers, for the newcomers, the scholars, to work in this direction. This is IoT plus AIoT. Even the computer science experts can work on the AI part, and the electronics specialist or the hardware, even the mechanical people can work upon the IoT part. I start, I think I can take a pause in between for 2 minutes. If there are any queries regarding this introduction and motivation part, I will like to take those queries. Anybody from the participants, if you people wish to ask something till now, you can kindly unmute your mic and ask.
I think Mr. Selvamani has raised his hand. I don't know for what.
You can ask the participant to even unmute the mic and ask.
Mr. Selvamani, Indrajit, you have raised your hand. Do you have any doubt or query to ask? You can unmute yourself.
Okay, if anybody else has anything, please ask. Otherwise, I'll proceed further. And I'll suppose that the session was pretty good.
Yes, ma'am, definitely. It is very informative. Please
Okay, I
proceed.
hope I can proceed and we can wait for the queries at the end of the session if there are any.
Yes.
So I will start now again with,
Ma'am,
yeah.
there is a question in the chat box.
Can you please read it out for me because I do not have access of the chat box immediately in front of me.
Okay.
I'm in the full screen mode.
Which is better, edge, fog in performance? Miss
Please.
Dr. Kanaka Durga is asking, which is better, edge, fog, in terms of performance?
In terms of performance, of course, edge is the best. That is, if you're able to do it at the device, it is the best. But it depends upon the various parameters that you have to take a decision, and even you can train your machine take the decision that when to perform the processing on the edge, fog, or cloud. As I've just said, the three things means edge is on the device itself, fog is on the centralized gateway of that network, and cloud is of course the world, at a very bigger distance from the network the cloud exists. So you can bifurcate the task. For example, the training part can be there on the cloud. When the machine is being trained, it can be done on the cloud, and the predictions, final predictions that are to be taken with the real time data, that is to be done at the edge. I think that is clear. If not, please ask again. Okay, with this, I proceed further.
Yes,
Ma'am,
ma'am.
I have a question.
Yes, please.
Uh, yes, ma'am. What's the major difference between the cloud and fog? Means in terms of that activity, whatever is performed. Edge and cloud difference is well known to us, but major difference it's very less, I guess.
No,
Fog and
no.
cloud.
Yeah, there is a very, very blurred difference, and it is just the play of terminology and nothing else.
Yes.
Just try to understand there are three things. If
Hmm.
you can understand, I have 5 LANs. In one LAN, say it is star topology. So, in that star topology, as I also demonstrated here, a star topology I have shown to you. See, the star topology is there. So the centralized hub of the star topology, we will say the network edge, that is the fog computing, will take place here. If the computing is taking place at the uh, devices itself, you can see a robot here, you can see a desktop, a mobile phone here. So if the computing is taking place there, we call it edge. If it is taking place at the centralized gateway, we call it fog. But if you need to take data from the next network, 2, 3, 4, and 5, the other networks, then definitely you'll have to go to the cloud. So the decision is based upon the time sensitiveness. At most of the times, the decision depends upon the latency that can be absorbed at that point of time, that is the application. So you have to take decision that way. For example, I have, I think, missed that slide to bring there. Then also, let me speak it. I've just told you, for example, you need to make learning. Yes, the self-driving car, I've told you, the fleet example, there are millions of cars they are producing. One car has to learn. The learning will take place at the cloud. The cloud will make the learning, and the learning will go to all the devices. Now the exact prediction when the car will be moving, the prediction has to be done at the edge. So this is edge and cloud. Very good. Now your question was fog. How does fog come into picture? Fog is nothing like, but fog has less characteristics than the cloud and more characteristics than the edge. So it depends that how heavy is your system. Maybe you never need a cloud and your job is done till fog itself. Then you can use the fog. But if you need to connect many networks together, you need to take data from many different networks, then of course fog will not be able to do it. You have to go to the cloud, one upper level as the tree hierarchy. Uh, am I clear in this manner?
Yes, yes, ma'am. Thank
Okay,
you.
okay, okay. Thank you. If there are any other queries, otherwise I'll go further.
Yeah, ma'am, there is a
So
question in the chat box.
please speak on.
When Edge is having better features compared to cloud in terms of bandwidth, latency, then can we prefer Edge than cloud?
No, there is nothing like that. We prefer edge or we prefer cloud. Uh, on our preference, it cannot work. It will depend upon the situation and the application we need to work with. Because as I gave you an example, the self-driving car, you have to do training on the cloud, you have to do the prediction at the edge, that is the car, because training will take lot of time, it will take lot of resources. Why to do the training on the car? And if you're doing training on that self-driving car, then it will learn alone. The other cars will not be able to take those parameters. You need to send the learned parameters to the cloud, then only the other cars will learn now. Is that fine with you?
Okay, ma'am, we proceed because this was a question mentioned on the
Okay,
chat
okay,
box.
fine, fine. So I proceed further with this, and we'll take the next session queries at the end of the session.
Yes.
So I'm here with the challenges of IoT, and we look these challenges as opportunities with us. So let us see how to overcome these challenges. with an explanation of, to start with, what is semantic gap. Different users may have different interpretations for the same vocabulary. Syntax means describing the correct format. Semantics mean describing the required comprehension and the correct interpretation. That is, the words and symbols, along with the accumulated knowledge in the mind and the context, make up the semantics. So there exists a semantic gap. Have a look here. This is on the left hand side, you can see the binary representation of data as the machine can see it. On the right hand side, you can see a beautiful apple as can be seen and perceived by human mind. This is the human perception, but this is the left hand side is the machine perception. Here is the semantic gap. That is, the representation of low level features is done by the machine, but human understand it in the terms of high level features. Closing this semantic gap means to define the exact intention of each model type by the description of the modeling method to apply. Let us see how. The semantic technologies come as the enabler. These technologies are to be utilized as the kernel technologies to overcome these challenges. You can see here a time span from 1988 to 2014 for the development of various technologies, starting from the simple web technologies, this Unicode, HTTP, HTML as the foundation technologies from 1988, 1990. So on, we came with URI, and in today's date, we have skipped URI also, and we use IRI for the international characters. For the serialization formats, the standard syntax being XML as the data format for data exchange, mainly on the web, and otherwise also for data exchange. For data exchange, we have been using XML. Then XHTML and JSON also is the standard format in today's date for even the IoT devices. But what we propose is to use RDF as the data model. We will just see how. Even to get better understanding and better semantics, JSON doesn't provide better semantics. For better understanding of machine, we have certain annotations. So RDFA, micro formats, micro data, JSON LD and turtle come into picture as for different serializations of the formats that are already available. To get the meaning, we use these, but we propose to use RDF, and even there was no SQL revolution in 2008. Now comes the topmost layer, that is the highest level of abstraction, the ontologies, the inference languages. RDFS and OWL are the most popular. RDFS is the schema, in fact, for RDF. With RDF, we are creating instances, we are creating the graphs, and with RDFS, we are creating the schema. Similarly for OWL, OWL has better expressiveness as compared to RDFS. SWRL is for inferencing, is for running the rules, that is the semantic web rule language, and so on. Yes, this Sparkle is for the query purpose. This is for querying the RDF data. Sparkle is for querying the RDF data. SWRL is for running on rules, running reasoning, that is the inferencing over the RDF data. But I say the data should be in RDF, not in JSON or RDB. RDB, that is the relational databases. We should not store data in relational databases, and we should not rely upon the JSON format because the semantics are missing, the understanding is missing. So going forward from a brief introduction of these semantic technologies, you can see the syntactic flexibility is increasing as we go down, but the cost of operation is increasing. Similarly, as you go up, you are more effective, more efficient, more semantics, more expressive, but the computational complexity is also increasing and the reasoning capability becomes better. If you keep down, you have less reasoning capabilities. Here is a brief overview of the terminology. This is not is not to go in the details of this. RDF is in the form of triples: subject, object, predicate. It provides metadata about the resources. We work in RDF graphs. RDFs extend RDF, as I just said, with class, property, type, subclass of, and the domain and range properties. OWL is again better than RDFs. It provides still more possibilities, the similarity, differences, construct classes, and reason also about the terms. Sparkle is the query language for the RDF data. And what is an ontology? An ontology is, in fact, a vocabulary. It acts as the schema. Knowledge base is the set of individual instances of the classes. Knowledge base stores the RDF data. The data in RDF format is stored somewhere, is stored in a triple store, and these triple stores are called the knowledge bases. RDF we propose should be used as a semantic data model. So two concepts come into picture: data exchange format and the data store format, as I just said. For data exchange, there is a debate in XML versus RDF. Similarly, for data store, there is a debate in relational databases and the triple stores in which we can store the direct RDF that we have just represented. Let us have a brief overview of this comparison also. XML is one of the most widely used formats for exchange. Yes, we agree. The meaning of XML documents is very clear because of the semantic markup tags. The tags are the domain terms. This is different from what HTML was. In XML documents, we are using the semantic markup. That is why we say, yes, the XML documents are intuitively clear. Yes, we agree with it. But the computers do not have any intuition to understand those semantic meanings. If we say any tag name, that tag name is meaningful for the human being, but obviously not meaningful for the machines. So the semantics for machines, the machine understandability, the machine readability, the machine interpretability is missing in XML. DTDs or XML schemas help us specify the structure of documents, but not the meaning of the document. The machines are not able to understand what this document contains. That is why we say that XML lacks a semantic model. It has only a surface model, that is a tree. The XML representation again makes no commitment on the domain specific vocabulary, that the data in this XML document comes from which dictionary, it conforms to which vocabulary or which ontology, which words shall we use to describe a given set of concepts. We do not come across reading an XML document. Machine cannot come to know. The XML representation requires prearranged agreement on the vocabulary, same as the relational databases. In relational databases, whenever you need to create a database, you need to create a schema first of all, then you put in the data, and later on you cannot change the schema. Same for XML, you should have a prearranged agreement on vocabulary. That is the schema. Vocabulary is the schema. While in RDF, the beauty is you do not need any prearrangement for vocabulary. You can put any data at any point of time. It is really incremental. The XML representation is only feasible for the closed collaboration. As I just said, no new data can be added, no new changes are allowed, and also it is not for shareable web resources. XML defines the elements, but it does not provide any modeling primitive, nor describes the meaningful relations between different elements. This is all what I just said about XML. Let us have a visual look upon the difference between XML and RDF. You can have a look here, an example from the Internet of Things lecture by Bernaghi in his one of the classes. So this is an example. You can see there is data about the unit is Celsius, time taken is 8:15, and this is the longitude and latitude at the of the location from where this certain temperature was located, and the temperature is 15 Celsius in decimal. So in XML we write it like this: the term unit Human beings can understand that this is the unit, but the machine cannot understand that this is the unit. If we go in RDF, then we can draw beautiful graphs, and human mind very easily understand with graphs. You see here the measurement at the center as a entity for which we are talking about, with the 5 attributes, that is the time, value, longitude and latitude, and also the unit. And at the below you can see the instance diagram for that RDF. If we look in the coding or the exact syntax of RDF, then we represent it in this manner. It looks something like this. When you people will start working upon it, then you can have a look. It looks something like this. The RDF textual representation of this graph is this. So the machine will understand the meaning of has value, has unit, has time, has longitude, because this RDF graph will already may or may not conform to some vocabulary, some ontology, which the machine will understand. So this is the beauty of RDF graphs. We are able to be more machine readable and more machine interpretable. This is a brief history of RDF, which we can, yes, see later if the time permit. So does human mind think in terms of a relational database? Of course, no, it is there. It's much easier to pass information between our heads and a graph than just creating weird database models. Understanding an entity relationship diagram is much easier than understanding the tables of a relational database. Tables are made for machine understanding. What if machines can understand the entity relationship diagram directly? I repeat, if our machines are able to understand the entity relationship diagram directly, why do we need to prepare relational tables out of that ERD? That is why we came up with the RDF graphs, and we can directly represent those RDF graphs in vector, so that the machine learning algorithms, the AI algorithms, can also do certain predictions and train the machine. RDBs store highly structured data in tables with a predetermined schema, as I already said, while the RDF graphs do not have a rigid structure or organization. RDBs therefore are for discrete data problems, while the graphs are for the connected data, and very suitable for the IoT data, because the IoT data comes from very diverse devices. The IoT data is highly unstructured, it is real time and massive. It is of high velocity, it is coming from different locations and with various multiple formats. If I talk of this term real time, yes, it is highly real time, the IoT data. And because of being real time, some attribute may change later on, which will create a problem if we have taken a relational database. As you can see example, yes, I've brought it there. An attribute in relational database changes from single value to multi-valued as it is real time data. With relational database, what solution do we have? You have to delete all the data of that attribute corresponding to that column. You need to create a new table holding all the multiple values for that attribute along with a foreign key reference. All these changes you need to make. And of course, various problems come into picture. This is 1NF, if you remember. So it is time consuming. All indices with the original table gets invalidated. All the previous SQL queries that you have run over this table gets invalidated. While in contrast, the RDF graph model is incremental in nature. The RDF graphs provide a platform to reveal complex relationships between unrelated data sets. And now the data scientists can focus on solving the problem, in fact, then ending up with just dealing with cleaning the data. Uh, we have various RDF knowledge graph solutions, stores, Enzo, Allegro Graph, Neo4j as NoSQL, Virtuoso is there. All they connect to the data lake. And data, what is a data lake? Again, a new term has come in. As I said, that data is coming from various diverse devices. There are different types of data sets which are prepared, and we allow them to remain at their own location. We do not make them travel at other places. We do not make them centralized at a data warehouse. We make them stay at their own place. That is why we call them data lake. But if we are not able to analyze the data of data lake, they will become data swamps. So all these Enzo, Allegrograph, Virtuoso, and Neo4j, and many more, they are able to connect to the data lakes. They create a graph of the data, that is the analytics ready data sets, and they do everything automatically. Here I have brought a visual from the Neo4j, the NoSQL database, Neo4j. You can see the various data lakes. Now I can say them. There is purchases is there, product catalog is there, views, user review, and so on. All data in different places. And beautifully, the knowledge graph is prepared by connecting all the data from various places, and real-time queries can be taken up on this knowledge graph, on this RDF graph. So the data is either stored in RDF, or you should convert that data into RDF before doing the real-time queries. You can see here that knowledge graphs are providing a 360-degree view of an entity, its surrounding entities also, and all the relationships also. And in addition to providing answers, they are capable of explaining them. I have again introduced a new term, explainable AI. If you utilize knowledge graphs, then you do get the capability of explaining whatever answer you have just deduced. And only ML and DL algorithms are by themselves are not able to explain the black box they are working with. Have a look on this beautiful slide. You have data from the different IoT devices, and this data from different IoT devices can be in an RDB store, can be in JSON, XML, CSV. You need to transform the, here comes the AI. You need to transform the data, integrate it. You need to perform some natural language processing, prepare a RDF graph. Now various algorithms, the top level, the high level algorithms can work upon it, the front end algorithms can work upon it, and various intelligent applications can come into picture. Also, there is a problem now, an open question is there to create a common schema model to make sure that the same tag name will be used among different parties. And ontologies are able to address these questions. Ontologies are the vocabularies for that RDF graph. You should have a vocabulary in place, that is a schema in place separately. And the beauty is that the ontology, the vocabulary made once, can be learned. You can have ontology learning procedures to add new entities into it. But in a RDB, learning the schema is a difficult task, and we say that they are monotonic in nature. The semantic web vision has brought to us these all semantic technologies. Look here how we started from the web. The web 1.0, that is the unstructured data was there. There were documents. If you used to search for a document, lots of documents come in, because we are not working with the data, we are working with the documents. HTML, there was focus on presentation. For dynamic pages, you used to have relational databases for storing data. Then came web 2.0, the social web. Facebook, Twitter applications came into being, so we call it read, write, and publish web. Now web 3.0, in today's date, we have semantic web, which is connecting knowledge. We have the best information connectivity. We have the best semantics with the semantic web. The examples of certain knowledge graphs in semantic web, DBpedia, e-commerce semantic search are the examples. Then you have the final, the social semantic web, ubiquitous web, using IoT, the web of things, because now you do not have to deal with only the web data, you have to deal with the devices also. IoT has made the devices connected. All the devices are now connected, all the things in the real world are now connected, and they are generating data. That data need to be captured. So the social semantic web will connect the intelligence of today's world. How to achieve this semantic web vision? You need to move from the web of documents model to the web of data model. You have to be entity centric. You have to publish the machine processable data. The data is to be machine processable. It is to be published on the cloud, and also the metadata using the language that can be understood by machines. And that language is RDF, which can be understood by machines. You need to build machines, that is the AI agents, to process the data. So the data becomes self-describing. Data interoperability is achieved at web scale, and openness is there. Web of data is linked data plus vocabularies plus the embedded metadata. Linked data links raw data from different. So what is linked data? It links raw data from various different. It is in fact the cloud plus open plus linked. We call it linked open data. Also, it is open to the public. It is on the cloud, and all the data sets are linked together. Well, this is DARPA, the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, gave the third wave of AI as the explainable AI and the contextual computing. Then Scott Jones joined the fourth wave also, that is the artificial general intelligence. This was symbolic AI, that is the good old fashioned AI, the expert systems, Mycen, the Rich and Knight AI book we all read, that is only the symbolic AI. People, students are taught in the classes symbolic AI, the production rules and all. Then from 1980, sub-symbolic AI came into being, the statistical learning, machine learning, deep learning algos. Then it was contextual computing from 2020 onwards. So we are in the world of contextual computing today, that is the explainable AI. And then will come artificial general intelligence, will be achieved after 2030 maybe, if we work with the semantic technologies to achieve the contextual computing, that is the explainable AI. I'm running short of time, so I can skip few of the slides. This is important. The role of semantic intelligence in AIoT. You can have a look, a visual of the semantic sensor web. This is the extension of the current web. You can see here that various different classes are joined from various different ontologies over the web. One is coming from the sensor ontology. You can see the pink one from sensor ontology. Then you are using weather ontology, temporal ontology, and the geospatial ontology. So this is the beauty, that you can connect data from various devices and things. In addition, you can have the meaning also if you're creating the RDF graph. This is a very good example of SSN ontology, that is the W3C Semantic Sensor Network Incubator Group's SSN ontology, made available to the researchers to work with, so that you are able to annotate the data coming from the IoT devices to make them meaningful. This IoT Lite ontology is a lightweight version of the same SSN ontology that we have just seen. This SSN ontology was devised in 2005, and then we came with the IoT Lite ontology. You can see in between, in the middle, you can see the sensing device, system, platform. All these have been inherited from the SSN ontology.